On behalf of the Klamath tribes, the Yahuskan, Modoc, on behalf of the Paiute people, we want to welcome all of you to our homelands here. You know, when I was asked to come up here and share a few words about this beautiful country of ours, I was reminded that coming up here, we need to welcome people when they come into our homelands in the right way. And we have a tradition with the Klamath and Modoc, Yahuskan, Paiute people here. We have a song that we share, and it's a welcoming song. I want to share this song with you, but before I share it with you, I want to share with you the meaning of this song. The words to this song, it means, now that we've met, we both have changed. And my ancestors explained to me, my relatives, that when somebody comes into your life, even if they come into your life for just a moment, your life will never be the same. You never know if that person that you're going to meet is going to be just in your life for that moment, or if that person is going to change your life forever. Hoenna, hoenna, hoennia, hoenna, hoenna, hoennia, hoenna, hoenna, hoennia, hoenna, hoenna, hoennia. Hoenna, hoenna, hoennia, hoenna, hoenna, hoennia, hoenna, hoenna, hoennia, hoenna, hoenna, hoennia. Oh, toka.
Well, I grew up in a very small town in the coal mining valleys of South Wales. So I was sort of used to small town life and a little bit of the richness of the community that can come around that. And when I was going through high school there, that sort of signaled the end of the coal mining industry, which had really dominated southern Wales for a couple of hundred years. And all sorts of economic hardship followed from that, and all sorts of social dysfunction. So all those years later, when I settled in Oregon and I began to see the changes coming in the timber industry, I sort of knew what to expect. I knew that it was going to be much more than economic dislocation. I knew that there was going to be all sorts of social dysfunction around that. And so I was intrigued by the way that urban Oregon was going to sort of watch rural Oregon endure that process, and what in any way the people of urban Oregon would do to reach out to help the folks in rural Oregon.
They were terrific people, and they were clearly having a terrifically hard time. You know, the timber industry at that time in Oregon was going through wrenching transformation, and the mills in all these small towns, and we drove through many of them as we came down here today, those mills were dying and closing and going away. And it was really hard for people to figure out some sort of way to sustain and to survive in these rural communities.
And at the time I was writing a newspaper column for the Oregonian, and that gave me the opportunity to travel as much as I wanted in rural Oregon and to write about the experiences that I found. When Jim Beaver, who had the bed and breakfast in Ashland, wrote to the governor of Oregon, suggested that we have a bike ride in Oregon, his letter made its way to me.
I always thought a great bicycle adventure would be a wonderful way to promote the sister cities of Ashland and Astoria. It would be a sort of a grand tour of Oregon, down the coast and across the valley from gateway city to gateway city. It would take a lot of organizing at first, but I'm sure it would quickly become one of the premier bicycling events in the western United States.
And I wrote the column that has now lived in infamy at the Oregonian, suggested this is an awfully good idea, somebody should do this.
And the very first idea we had was that I would ride my bicycle and 49 people would come with me, and 50 of us would pull into town, and we'd buy as much pizza and we'd drink as much beer as we possibly could. And pretty much that's what you've all been doing tonight, from what I've seen so far. And in that very first year, instead of 50 people, 1,008 people came out and rode with us. And the whole thing sort of took off from there. And by the third year, we capped the number at 2,000. And you know, every year since, 2,000 people have come out and ridden with us. And
well, the first big challenge was that nobody involved in the original sort of group of people putting this together had ever done anything like it. And being sort of young and brash as we were, we thought, well, why would we ask for expert opinion on something like this? We can just do this. I mean, I didn't even own a bicycle. That's how naive I was. But back then, we were sort of all in it together. So the fact that some nights hundreds of people, literally hundreds of people, went to bed hungry, it just made it sort of more fun in some ways. Of course, I can say that now. It didn't feel that way when they were hunting for my tent so that they could hang from a nearest tree, the organizer of this thing. But somehow, you know, we all get up the next morning, and usually the people who had not had dinner the night before managed to have breakfast the next morning. And we all sort of rallied around, we supported each other. And of course, through the years, the legend of that first ride has grown. And now, you know, you can talk to folks who say, we went 5 days without food and water. And eventually we saw the Pacific, sort of thing. But there was a great sense of adventure and a great sense of camaraderie, which helped sort of spur that decision at the end of the first week's ride, let's do it again next year. And of course we came back and we've been improving the ride and sort of tweaking it every year since.
But over the years, it's blossomed into something that, for me, is amazingly humbling. To be able to put out an idea that generates $5 million in economic benefit every year for the state of Oregon, that brings money and tourists into towns like Fossil and Bly and Silver Lake, that provides entertainment and fun and exercise and fresh air and beauty and the smells and the sights that we all enjoy as we ride our bikes, is more than I ever could have imagined.
It's a moving city.
It's a well-run
Very
machine.
well run, yeah.
It's like a rolling circus.
It's like a traveling circus.
It's a circus.
We like to turn on right out of this world. We like short dresses when they're on girls. We like to skip school, break all the rules. We don't like to study much. Arithmetic makes us sick. We like to have lots of fun, sing these songs for you. Yeah. We like to have lots of fun, sing these songs for you. We do! Okay.
We don't have elephants and we don't have dancing dogs, but we do just about. You know, we come blowing into Bly or Silver Lake, you know, with big trucks and and a beer garden and a stage and 2,500 people. And like a circus overnight, boom, sound, lights, action. And then there's always a certain amount of sorrow that I feel the next day as we leave, because we're pulling out. And, but very much like a circus. The circus leaves town. And so I think that's a really interesting metaphor. And I think that we bring a certain level of entertainment, exotic characters, and we leave part of that in the communities. It's informative too if you're thinking about how to run the ride. You know, what's a responsible circus do, right? You know, we leave the place better than when we arrive. And I think that it's also important that we bring something to the community. We're bringing a certain experience to that community, but it's mutual. That comment that Jeff made, I mentioned on the stage the other night, at the outset, about how you sort of touch people's lives, whether you really go deeper than that, there's an impact. And I like to think that as a circus, we're bringing a positive impact to town, but we're also leaving a little bit stronger, clearer, more informed. So that's my metaphors.
It's amazing, really. Chilliwack used to be a boom town. There were 7 lumber mills in this area. And the forests have all been cut down now, and the boom town has gone away. And it's made a big difference. Chilliwack is gradually diminishing to nothing. There's a little alfalfa growing and a few tourists, and that's what we survive on.
It used to be pretty much a logging community. Not so much anymore. If you work in Prospect, you either work at the school, you work at the Forest Service, there's a few stores, restaurants around, but most people have to travel to the valley to work, that kind of thing. But they choose to live up here because it's beautiful.
There's a population of about 500 more or less, 4-H clubs, the churches. We're always having fundraisers for something or other.
It starts with the relationship with the communities. When we go into the communities to discuss our actual visit there, you contract with different aspects of the community. It may be the football team for moving bags, it may be the Lions Club for serving breakfast, but each of those groups is getting something in return. They're getting the experience of working with the cyclists, but they're also getting a cash contribution to the community that's much larger than they'd get from a bake sale. In a year, we probably spend about $150,000 with the 7 communities that we visit.
We're trying to raise money so that we can insulate the church. It's built in 1912, of course, it has no insulation in it. When we turn the heat on, we have to turn it on Saturday, so it'll be warm enough on Sunday when it gets down to, 0 or so in the winter. And we spend about $200 a week just for that heat, for those 24 hours.
This is a great opportunity for Bly to make that much money. The community center that everybody in town uses, the floor in the kitchen is about to fall through. That's going to be a priority.
We have a really high socioeconomic need here, and every little bit we can do for kids. I don't like to see a kid go hungry.
The financial impact is huge because this community is living on the edge, you might say. And so the very fact that Cycle Oregon is coming through and paying us to be volunteers is just, I can't even tell you what that's going to allow us to do. We're already thinking about all the exciting things we can put in our budget now.
Some years I think the ride is the least important part of it. The ride-in is sort of almost incidental. It's really, it's much more about community. It's about bringing people from the urban areas, because an overwhelming percentage of our riders come from urban areas. So just by taking people from the cities and out there and planting them for a while and having them sit on somebody's front porch or camp under the stars, you get a better sense of what that's all about than simply by sitting at home and reading about it in the newspaper maybe.
I find it's the people in the smallest towns that seem to really go out and to be the friendliest.
Coming in at the end of the day and having all the volunteers out there cheering and signs and chocolate milk and makes the really hard days really worth it at the end.
The thing, you wrote it, but they're there cheering for you when
and
you
they're so
come in.
excited. We took a swim in Silver Lake, and there were 2 young girls that had their pool open to all of us, and they were so cute. They said, it's been so much fun meeting people from all over. They said, we thought it would just be people from Oregon. And they said, we met somebody from Germany today and somebody from New Zealand today, and they were so excited. And that makes it, it makes you feel good.
Last year when I did it because I wanted to enjoy a bike ride. But this year, the main reason, aside from Crater Lake, was because of all the little communities that we visit. It was a part of Cycle Oregon that I didn't really know existed until last year, and this year really is visiting all these small towns that used to be dependent on timber, and now they're changing industries to be dependent on tourism, and just seeing how those towns are being revitalized. And it's nice to be able that we actually give back.
I grew up on the coast, and I'd heard of Bly, but I'd never been there. And so now, 40 years later, I've actually made it there and got to see it, long overdue, and just got to talk with a bunch of the folks in the town and the community, and kind of why they're there and what they do, and how they sustain themselves, and it was wonderful.
And I've revisited a couple of them just because they're so unique, and to get to some of these places, you go through such beautiful, beautiful country. It's a delight to come back.
The first year I rode back in 2003, we went through Joseph, and I'd never been there. And I fell in love with Joseph, and I took my family there the next summer. And that's the kind of thing that Cycle Oregon, I think, brings. It connects both parts of the state.
It's also really rewarding to just see that the transformation in a way that can go through some of those rural communities during the course of a Cycle Oregon visit. When we first talked to some of those towns, on a January day in Bly or Silver Lake or Burns or any of hundreds of the towns that we've been, and life sort of looks pretty grim. They're not exactly convinced that they can actually pull this off. And then, we roll into town 9 months later, and Main Street is all spruced up, and everyone in town and everyone from 30 miles away is right there, and it looks like the most hustling, bustling place.
So one of the things I'm most proud of being a Cycle Oregon board member is that we can come out to a town like Bly, Oregon, and create this energy within the community. We hear, yeah, it's great that you bring money, but you also forced us to work together.
I think it pulls us together as a community, because we have the community club and they act on their own, and the Lions Club and they act on their own, the school sometimes, but it pulls us together for one purpose. I had somebody come in my office today and say, how can I help? And where do you need me? They all want to pitch in and want to be a part of it.
So every bit of the community, is involved, and so it's really a community effort. 100% support. We've never had this many flags up in our community ever, and people starting to go, hey, I like this.
We've got a lot of community pride, and we have cleaned up and we are showing our pride, just by the bicycle contest, the balloons, the decorations, so many volunteers. Got a friend in a wheelchair. She said, you come get me. I want to be on the sidelines. So
Almost like, dressing up for the family photo kind of thing, you get everything all ready and to show it off and have people here and, spruce up the house or whatever you have to do,
I think it's exciting for them to get to see our small community and take that opportunity to find out about us and see where we're at. And that's 2,200 people that will know where Prospect is when you say, where's Prospect, Oregon?
And of course, it's always fun to be in the grocery store, the little mom and pop grocery store, or the local tavern on the night that Cycle Oregon is town. We routinely set sales records wherever we go in these taverns and mom and pop stores. So we tell people that we're going to do that, but you know what? Some of the places, they don't actually believe that we're really going to show up.
A lot of times we'll triple the population of a town, and so it's a giant boost to the small rural communities.
we went and had dinner at the cafe last night, and then I drove by later, and it was packed. So that's the kind of thing we like to see, is helping out our local businesses.
Like, we're going to go to the Prospect Trophy Room, whatever it is right now. But that's the way
Spend
you
a little
kinda,
money.
Yeah, spend a little money, which I'm assuming is what they would like you to do when you come through the communities.
I remember last year going into Powers, talking to one of the ladies who worked at the general store. And I remember she was saying that they made as much money in one day there as what they will for 3 to 4 months out of the year. The place where I ate lunch today, the waitress was like, "You're going to be back next year, right?" I'm like, "I may come on vacation, but I don't think the ride's going to be here next year." But she was so excited. This is something that, they may never see any, like a town of like 500 people, having 2,000 people coming at once. I mean, that never happens unless it's an invasion.
There have been challenges, there's no doubt. But on the whole, we tried to listen to what the communities wanted from us, what their expectations were when they first extended the invitation to us. And we tried to be as good guests as we possibly could everywhere that we went. So as a result, I think our reputation is good in communities throughout the state and across all sort of shades of the political spectrum in Oregon. But we managed to share this sort of single vision that there's a richness about rural community Oregon life and something that we can all learn from it. For me, it's never been that much about the bicycle. And anyone who has watched me ride up a hill can tell you it's still not.
Are we ready to go? You guys are here? We don't have anyone else coming? All right. Engage to infinity and beyond. Here we go. This is a way to get out of the normal.
Tag 1 is departing camp on course.
Copy that. Tag 1 is out on course.
I get to play. I get to be a kid for a week, and then I got to go back to real life. And it's fun to help.
Yeah.
I was dumb enough to ride it once. You don't have to train for this. You just have to know how to drive and how to drive in the wrong lane. Because I spend all my week in this lane, in oncoming traffic. It's kind of stressful driving with 2,000 unknowns all over the place. And what to do for the 12 hours you sit out on course. So I juggle, play lots of music, and just try to be happy. Treat everybody as if It's the first time I've seen him, and how can I help him today? Even if I pick him up every day, it's the first time I've seen you today. How can I help you today? These are our customers. This is what we're here to do, is to help these guys. It's nice when it's boring and we don't have anything to do. I describe the new drivers, I tell them it's basically 12 hours of boredom with 1 hour of hang on to your hats, boys and girls. It's gonna be crazy. And I get to watch people dance. It's fun when it's like hopping and jumping and they're all dancing, and you know, chicken dance is interesting when that comes on, because you can only do that with one arm when you're riding a bike.
Wait a minute. America, sweet America.
It's 9/11. It seemed appropriate.
Yes, he did. Heavy brotherhood from sea to shining sea. You know, I wish I had somebody to help me sing this. America, I love you, America.
Last year I found a, I don't remember, I forget which community it was. I came across this bakery stand, local community bakery. She had fresh made cookies, pastries, croissants, scones, and I thought, I'm gonna buy some scones for my team. I need 16 scones. And I get up there and they're like $3 a piece, and I only had enough to buy 10. And I said, oh, give me 10 of them. And she started to cry, and I said, what's wrong? And she goes, I've been here all day and no one's bought a thing. Can I give you some cookies? I said, no, I only have $20. So, you know, I'll take those. I went back, didn't have enough for my team, and I ran into another driver, and he goes, let's go get the rest. And he brought $20, and we bought enough for the team, and we cleaned out most of her cookies, and she had a day's worth of sales in one customer. Phenomenal crew. When that stuff goes crazy, everybody does what they're supposed to do, and it just, you know, we can only shuttle 72 people at a time. There's 2,300 riders. So we got everybody in camp before the course closed yesterday. I'm happy with my crew.
Cycle Oregon has a long, rich tradition of civic philanthropy. It all started on the very first ride. We were also thrilled to have concluded the 6 days, to have made it all the way to Brookings, and to still have a little bit of money in our pockets. That we sort of almost literally passed the hat around the parking lot where we all gathered. And we said, if anyone's got any money, you know, left over, toss it in the hat, and we will share that with the communities that we just, you know, visited. And then somebody on the organizing committee at the end said, why don't we disperse half of it and we'll keep half, and then we'll have a little fund going forward that we'll call the Cycle Oregon Fund. And then after a few years, as that started to grow, we partnered with the Oregon Community Foundation. And every year then since, you know, we began to receive requests for grants from the communities that we'd visited. So we started off in a very small way. You know, if we'd passed through a town and we'd stayed at the Elks Club and they'd served us lunch, and they didn't have a dishwasher and they'd always wanted a dishwasher, and we'd give them a grant for $700 so they could buy a dishwasher on Plymouth. And we did things like that, you know, for 2 or 3 years. And then slowly the grant requests began to grow. We began to look for additional opportunities so that by year 8 or 10, we had more money to spend, and the requests from communities were getting a little larger. There might be a project at a high school or at a local community park, you know, to build some infrastructure, some things like that. Some years ago, we passed the $1 million mark. That was a great landmark for us. And we began to set aside each year some of those that we refer to as signature grants. So the community of Halfway that we'd visited a number of times on our way to the Snake River was trying to save its fairgrounds as the sort of civic centerpiece, and we were able to put $50,000 towards that, and that sort of launched the Cycle Oregon Fund to a new level. And of course then this year we announced the biggest grant in our history, the $100,000 towards the Salmonberry project.
And we know that we've pretty much had a wonderful experience and an incredible welcome and a rich cycling experience this week. But we understand when there are 2,000 of us going down the highway and we have all the, the state patrol officers and all the volunteer vehicles and everything coming around, we kind of create our own safe environment to do it. So we still have a vision of something beyond that, something that would actually be a separated bike path in Oregon where everyone could ride totally separated from the traffic. And then we started to think, well, okay, where would be the perfect place to do one of those that would be a really iconic, landmark, significant one? It just so happens that to the heart of the Tillamook is an old railroad that they used to use, of course, to bring the timber out. The railroad hasn't been used for years, and it now seems certain that the railroad never will be used. It also happens that the Salmonberry Creek runs through there, which is one of the classic wild rivers of Oregon with native steelhead in it. So there's a remarkable opportunity for us there to connect the Willamette Valley and the Oregon coast with a paved bike path through the Tillamook. So tonight, the Board of Directors of Cycle Oregon has asked me to announce that we are giving the largest grant in Cycle Oregon history, $100,000 this evening, from all of you to launch the project to create a paved bicycle path through the Tillamook Forest for all of Oregon and for all of America to come to enjoy.
Of course, it all comes from every single rider, every man, woman, and child every year coming out and doing it with us. And everyone contributes either directly, through the registration fees, or some by making additional contributions to that fund.
People enjoy getting out, riding their bike, seeing some new territory, staying in the state and enjoying places they may not have ever gotten to. But they also enjoy the notion that they're giving back to the communities we ride through and beyond.
So we're trying to create an experience that really changes lives. And the bike is just a tool. It's just a vehicle to get to that experience. And that's the beauty of Cycle Oregon, because we transform the way people think about bicycles.
It really is about giving back to the communities all around Oregon, especially rural communities.
It's awesome. It's amazing.
It was just the most amazing experience.
I think it does so much. I think on a very sort of real and concrete basis, it brings people together.
It's been so fun. Such a great week.
We've got this connection with rural Oregon that other organizations just don't have. And I think it's because they understand that we really care about what's going on in these communities.
It's fantastic every time. I think it's awesome.
The important thing that it does is it connects people throughout the state.
Incredible. It's kind of unbelievable.
To me, Cycle Oregon is just a win-win-win.
It's fun.